Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Bocas Lit Fest and One Caribbean Media, welcome to the official ceremony for the 2026 OCM Bocas Prize. My name is Ardene Sirjoo, and I have the pleasure of being your host again this year at this celebration of Caribbean books and writers. As we begin, let me acknowledge some special guests on behalf of all the speakers to follow. Marina Salandi Brown, founder and president of the Bocas Lit Fest, and fellow Bocas Lit Fest directors. Georgia Popplewell, managing director of the Bocas Lit Fest. Nicholas Laughlin, festival director of the Bocas Lit Fest. Douglas Wilson, director, One Caribbean Media, and general manager, Trinidad Express Newspapers. Margaret Busby, chief judge for the 2026 OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature. And the chairs of the genre judging panels, Raymond Antrobus, Kelly Baker-Josephs, and Alison Donnell. Diplomats and representatives of diplomatic missions, including their excellencies, ambassadors of Venezuela, France, Mexico, and Spain. OCM Bocas Prize winners, Damian Richardson, Director of Culture, Ministry of Culture and Community Development. Sponsors and partners from Trinidad and Tobago and abroad, writers, friends, and volunteers, members of the media, and everyone watching on the festival livestream wherever you may be. This prize ceremony honors the 3 winners of the OCM Bocas Prize in the categories of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, and we'll soon learn which of these extraordinary books has been chosen by the judges as the 16th overall winner. This evening also celebrates the winner of the 2026 Bocas Henry Swanzy Award for Distinguished Service to Caribbean Letters. But along with the celebration, this evening's gathering of writers also reminds us of friends and colleagues from the Caribbean literary community who we have lost in the past year. Let's take a few minutes to remember and commemorate them. Hazel Simmons MacDonald, St. Lucian author and academic, and a former judge for the OCM Bocas Prize. Anne Wormsley, British publisher, editor, scholar, and archivist of Caribbean literature and art, and the winner of the 2018 Bocas Henry Swanzy Award. Sterling Henderson, Trinidadian journalist and poet. Eric Huntley, Guyana-born publisher, educator, and community organizer, co-founder of Boga Louverture Publications. Gilbert Farrar O'Sullivan, Trinidadian poet who died unexpectedly in January, just days before the publication of her debut book. And Rupert Roopnarine, Guyanese writer, scholar, filmmaker, teacher, political activist, and winner of the 2013 OCM Bocas Prize for Nonfiction. We also remember 2 members of the broader Trinidad and Tobago arts community who were true friends of the Bocas Lit Fest and past participants in our events and programs. Danielle DeFontala, film and television producer, director, and writer, and Raymond Edwards, vocalist, broadcaster, and host of our pioneering festival radio in 2014. As we remember these departed allies, we offer some poetic reflection. First, an excerpt from Rupert Roopnarine's Suite for Supriya, read by Andre Bagu, himself the winner of the 2021 OCM Bocas Prize for Nonfiction, followed by a poem from Gilbert Farrar O'Sullivan's book Sea Blast, read by Ira Matur, winner of the 2023 OCM Bocas Prize for Nonfiction. We welcome Andre.
From Suite for Supriya. Forte. I kissed my father today. We have no history of kisses. I who kissed my son full on the mouth. We walked by the sea. We do have a short history of walking, a recent stumbling togetherness far from home. He walks slowly now, with a limp. He takes a fierce athletic pride in walking well, He told me today that it was the farthest he had walked since his stroke struck and slowed him down, saddened his eyes. We talked as we walked by the sea. The tide was in. Dogs romped away from leashes, yapping at companions they snarled at when leashes held. It seemed important to walk the same route you and I had taken that day by the sea. The tide was out. It was easy to mistake large mushrooms of chalky stones for debris on a Kentish shore. The pebble I brought you later that night, I picked up from a pebble field on the beach. A shape, no edges, black with streaks of white, a thing of no particular distinction. I was drawn to its cleanliness after all those polishing tides, snug among flinty companions in a pebble field on a Kentish shore, a gritty, persistent sort of ordinary stone. Rupert Roopnarine, 1943 to 2026.
Waving Gallery by Gilbert Farrar O'Sullivan. Piarco Airport, 1988. Week after the carnival, the best of self spent. What was yours is now lent. Pray for rain to unfurl the shrinking lime leaves, blare the surging tears. You know full well you can leave the island anytime, but everything is sacrifice. Sky gives its best work, flexing electrified orange, a Christly glow, a challah cloud for the morning bake. On the day of flight, remember such merciful mornings. Glance drowsy hill ranges from atop the stair. Too many times prodigal. No one to bid farewell. Mind your head against the unforgiving arch. Mouth, goodbye. Tote feelings without gnash or cry. Muster all musts. Swear a colonnade of yeses. You will return when made worthier. You will and you shall. The sun makes you believe.
Thank you, Andre and Ira. Like the OCM Bocas Prize, the Bocas Lit Fest itself marks its 16th year in 2026. Festival director Nicholas Laughlin has been a member of the hard-working Bocas team from the beginning. Please, let's welcome him.
Friends and allies, sponsors, partners, writers, and readers all, good evening. Some of you may remember that this very room in the old fire station was the venue for the first OCM Bocas Prize ceremony back in 2011, also the year of our first festival. And in that founding year, the winner of the fiction category of the prize was a book called How to Escape from a Leper Colony, a book of short fiction by Tiffany Yannick of the US Virgin Islands. And lately, I've been thinking about one particular piece in that book titled The Bridge Stories. The fantastical premise of The Bridge Stories is that a series of bridges is built to connect all the islands of the Caribbean to their neighboring islands and to the continental mainlands. As Yannick describes it, huge and stretching from Guyana, the place in the world most south, to Miami, the place in the world most north. But it turns out that these interconnected bridges spanning the archipelago, although splendid to look at, are yet too delicate to bear the weight of actual human traffic. And at the very moment of inauguration, the bridges all at once collapse. And though they were surrounded by the sea, Yannick writes, no one in any of the communities had bothered to learn to swim. The water never seemed as important as the land. A decade and a half later, this allegorical aspect of the bridge stories seems even more pointed. We find ourselves at yet another of those repeating moments in Caribbean history when the very concept of the Caribbean, of Caribbean identity and cooperation, and allied issues of sovereignty and self-determination are up for debate at the highest and maybe lowest levels. And not merely as theoretical questions, but as pragmatic matters of regional relations, governance, leadership, and security, with real consequences for ordinary citizens in their daily lives. What does this have to do with our agenda tonight? We are here to celebrate the OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature, sponsored by One Caribbean Media, in the middle of a festival that is very firmly rooted in the intellectual and creative soil of Trinidad and Tobago, but has from the beginning professed a Caribbean range, which you can discern across our entire festival program, and not just in the OCM Bocas Prize. There's no contradiction or conflict here. I'm sure more than a few of you know that Trinidad and Tobago's national anthem, Forged from the Love of Liberty, composed by Patrick Castani, was originally intended as the anthem of the short-lived Federation of the West Indies. And when the Federation fell apart in 1962, Castani thriftily repurposed his composition as the anthem for a newly independent Trinidad and Tobago. So when we sing "Side by Side We Stand, Islands of the Blue Caribbean Sea," those lines, perhaps palimpsestically, suggest not just two twin islands, but the greater Antillean archipelago. I relish the irony, if that's what it is, that at our most patriotic or even nationalistic, when we stand and sing the anthem, we are, however, inadvertently reaching out to a bigger geography, commemorating a bigger idea and a bigger ideal, as we should. Our writers, Caribbean writers, have long been concerned with this bigger idea of what the Caribbean is and can be, how and for whom, investigating what is similar and dissimilar in our interconnected histories, recording, questioning, celebrating, criticizing, always pushing back against cramped notions of Caribbean possibility, asking us to imagine more boldly and try harder to find common purpose in our bewildering diversity. At a crucial moment in his poem, The Schooner Flight, Derek Walcott Shabin says he has no nation but the imagination. There are several ways you can read that claim, but I choose to take it as a reminder that the first step in creating any kind of better or greater Caribbean reality is to imagine its possible forms. And we cannot entirely defer that profound task to our political leaders. The day that ordinary people abandon to the politicians the responsibility of nurturing Caribbean integration is the day we have given up on the idea and the ideal. And that is no original thought. Black Stalin said pretty much the same thing in his Calypso Caribbean Unity 47 years ago. So this brings me to the ultimate reason for and value of the work we do at the Bocas Lit Fest, here at our annual festival, and year-round in our many projects and activities, and the ultimate value of the work of our writers. Books, poems, stories entertain and comfort us, but they also expand our knowledge, of course, sharpen our discernment, provoke us into critical thought. Now more than ever, all of us citizens of these islands and this archipelago need the creative, intellectual, and ethical stimulation of the literary arts in all their forms as we figure out who and what we want to become. We need our writers to give us the vocabulary, the grammar, the metaphors, to most accurately describe and hence understand our place and time. We need them to tell the stories that show and explain us to ourselves, uncover suppressed truths, and break open stereotypes to reveal fascinating and messy and sometimes inconvenient human actuality. And we need organizations like the Bocas Lit Fest and our sibling literary festivals and NGOs across the Caribbean region to continue the essential work of growing the literary arts, developing our writers, broadening their audiences, and tearing down every tiresome assumption that literature, that writing and reading are for some and not all. That is the imperative behind our 2026 festival theme, All Together Now, through which we assert that literature is for everybody, that writing and reading create a community that must be open to all, and also that the future evolution of our societies and our Caribbean civilization depends on the creative and critical thinking manifested by our authors. That is why the Bocas Lit Fest engages with writers and readers of all ages, and why so much of our work is focused on children and young people. It's why we'll be staging 4 one-day community festivals across Trinidad and Tobago later this year, supported by Methanex, sharing the Bocas formula with audiences who may not yet have had the chance to experience it. And it's the motivation driving writer development programs like our year-round Bocas Academy, which aims to give every budding Caribbean writer the opportunity to cultivate their talent. It's also why the OCM Bocas Prize matters so much. It rewards individual writers and celebrates specific books, but the prize also platforms and spotlights contemporary Caribbean writing more widely, generating interest and debate, and reminding us how deep and nourishing are the wellsprings of our shared Caribbean literary heritage. So we are enduringly grateful to One Caribbean Media for not just sharing this vision, but supporting it tangibly each year. Just in case you haven't deduced that I myself am a committed regionalist, I'll end by adding that the community implied in that phrase, all together now, is, as far as I'm concerned, a Caribbean community stretching across the sea that simultaneously isolates and connects us. In Tiffany Yannick's story, you'll remember, the tragedy of the collapsed bridges is compounded by the tragedy that no one had bothered to learn to swim. But our writers show us how to keep afloat in a sea of stories, how to journey on the tides of language, and trace the restless currents of ideas back to deepest truths. They remind us that, as Kamau Brathwaite wrote, the unity is submarine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those reflections, Nicholas. Now it's time for the first of tonight's awards, the 2026 Bocas Henry Swanzy Award for Distinguished Service to Caribbean Letters. And what better person to introduce you to the awardee than someone whose own service to Caribbean writers and writing is manifest in this very festival. Please welcome the founder of the Bocas Lit Fest and president of the board of directors, Marina Salandi Brown.
Good evening, everyone. Bocas Henry Swanzy Award for Distinguished Service to Caribbean Letters, now in its 14th year, was founded in 2013. It's named for the late BBC World Service radio producer Henry Swanzy, who was the editor and producer on Caribbean Voices, a program originally founded by Una Marson of Jamaica. It created a unique and invaluable platform for Caribbean literature in the 1940s and 50s by broadcasting fiction, poems, essays, and criticism by West Indian writers across the region. This annual award acknowledges and celebrates the contributions of critics, editors, broadcasters, publishers, and others who've devoted their careers to developing and promoting Caribbean writers and writing. Bocas Henry Swanzy awardees are chosen by the Bocas Lit Fest and honored annually at the festival. The recipient of the 2026 Bocas Henry Swanzy Award is Guyana-born, Canada-based Frank Burbelsing. Please give him a warm round of applause. Frank Burbelsing is Professor Emeritus at York University in Toronto, and we honor him for his groundbreaking work as a scholar, critic, and teacher of Caribbean literature, and especially of Indo-Caribbean writers and writing. Born in 1938 in a small village in British Guiana, Frank Burbelsing studied for his undergraduate degree at what was then called the University College of the West Indies in Mona, Jamaica. A Commonwealth scholarship later took him to India before he moved to London, where he earned an MA from King's College, studying part-time while also teaching at secondary schools. Moving to Canada in 1967, Burbelsing taught in various communities around Toronto while earning his PhD from King's College. He began teaching at York University in 1970 and remained there for the rest of his academic career, retiring in 2003. Burbelsing introduced the first university course in Caribbean literature in Canada. His research and teaching ranged across the rapidly growing corpus of Commonwealth and post-colonial literature. And over the years, a series of fellowships took him to universities in Commonwealth countries such as New Zealand and Nigeria. But Caribbean books and writers were always at the heart of his critical work. He was a key member of the generation of Caribbean scholars who firmly established Caribbean literature and Caribbean studies in the academy, building a solid foundation for the next 3 generations of researchers. The 150th anniversary of the first arrival of indentured Indians in Guyana, commemorated in 1988, was an impetus for the founding of the Ontario Society for Studies in Indo-Caribbean Culture, with Burbelsing as the inaugural president. In that capacity, he was a leading figure in the organizing of a conference on Indo-Caribbean culture at York University, a major gathering for scholars and students of the Indian diaspora, and a landmark in the development of Indo-Caribbean studies as an academic field. Burbelsing went on in subsequent decades to play a major role in shaping the field as a scholar, as a mentor to younger researchers, and as the editor of books like Jahad Jibai, an anthology of Indo-Caribbean literature in 1988, Indenture and Exile, the Indo-Caribbean Experience in 1989, and several others. Over his career, and well after his formal retirement, Burbelsing published 15 books in total on various aspects of Caribbean, Commonwealth, and Canadian literature, and Indo-Caribbean literature, as well as cricket, one of his great passions, and Guyanese history and politics. In 2012, as chair of the nonfiction judges for the OCM Bocas Prize, he participated in the 2nd annual festival. Imagine his ghost is in this room. In an interview with Nalini Mohabir and Ronald Cummings, published in the journal Small Acts in 2029, Burbelsing said this: "I don't think of my writing as being very theoretical, The main things that I saw and wrote about were political issues of race and color and class. I come from a region of the Caribbean where the entire society was structured on that. If there's a project to my work, that project is about the progress of the Caribbean and the overcoming of the divisions of colonialism. That is a project shared by many Caribbean writers and thinkers, one that is very much still in progress. Although Frank Birbal could not be here with us this evening to receive this award in person, we take this opportunity to congratulate, celebrate, and honor him and his lifelong commitment to the progress of the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina, and many congratulations to Professor Frank Birbal, and I know we all wish him the best. Now to the 2026 OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature. The prize would not be possible without One Caribbean Media, the longest-standing sponsor of the Bocas Lit Fest and a supporter of the literary arts year-round. I think that deserves some applause. It is always a pleasure to have with us Douglas Wilson, Director, One Caribbean Media, and General Manager, Trinidad Express Newspapers. Please welcome him.
Good evening, everyone. Festival Director Nicholas Lachlan, Founder and President Marina Salandi Brown, Festival organizers, writers, poets, literary community at large, fellow sponsors, partners, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to address you at this year's Bocas Lit Fest, and to do so on behalf of One Caribbean Media, to be amongst the storytellers, thinkers, and readers who keep Caribbean imagination alive and growing. Bocas Lit Fest has for some time, in its relatively short span as these festivals go, is viewed as a premier Caribbean literary gathering, a platform for emerging and established writers, engaging regional and also international dialogue. This marks the 16th year of the OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature, a milestone that speaks to sustained purpose. Over these 16 years, the prize has grown into what is widely recognized as the most important, most coveted literary award for Caribbean writers. It has become a benchmark of excellence and a vital point of recognition for the region's literary talent. This year, we are especially encouraged that the prize received 87 entries across 3 categories. That number is not just a statistic, it is evidence that Caribbean writing is not static, it is not fading, it is dynamic, diverse, and continuously renewing itself. The creative energy of this region continues to flow undiminished. And this matters, because just as One Caribbean Media, through its newspapers, digital platforms, and broadcast channels, provides a necessary space for public voice, public opinion, public debate, the OCM Bocas Prize serves a parallel function in the cultural sphere. It is a forum, a platform that amplifies Caribbean writers, a space that carries their voices beyond national borders and positions them within a broader international literary conversation. It affirms that Caribbean storytelling is not peripheral. It is central. That alignment is not accidental, reflecting a deeper shared purpose between OCM and the Bocas Lit Fest. It reflects a commitment to the idea that Caribbean stories must not only be told, but must be given platforms that allow them to travel, to endure, and to be engaged with seriously. Our relationship with this festival is a long-term one and a deeply valued one. We are proud not only to support the prize, but also to serve as a media partner to the Bocas Lit Fest, helping to amplify its work, extend its reach, and support its year-round presence in the cultural life of the region. Because literature does not exist only on the stage or in the moment of an award ceremony. It lives in continuity, in publication, in discussion, in classrooms, in newspapers, homes, and increasingly the digital spaces. Our role as a media organization is to help carry that conversation forward. We are here to affirm something more fundamental, that art and culture are not luxuries. They are essential to nation building. They are essential to opportunity. They are essential to the long-term cohesion and resilience of our society, any society. Literature is not a luxury. It is a necessity for understanding who we are, whether it is in that historical memory or in social reflection. In a region as historically complex and culturally rich as ours, storytelling is not decorative. It is foundational. It is about identity, how identity is formed, and how memory is preserved, and how a sense of shared belonging is sustained. To invest in storytelling is, therefore, to invest in social cohesion. It is to invest in our cultural continuity. And it is to invest in the ongoing project of national and regional identity. This is why sponsorship of the arts cannot be understood simply as charity or as corporate generosity in the traditional sense. It is instead a civic responsibility. It is partnership, not patronage. And at this moment in time, when arts funding globally and in small island developing states in particular faces real and sustained pressure, it is important that the private sector responds with clarity and with conviction. Because leadership is not only expressed in times of certainty, it is most clearly demonstrated in moments of constraint, where we presently are. OCM's continued commitment to the Bocas Prize is one expression of that principle. It is a deliberate decision to stand with writers, stand with literature, and to stand with the idea that Caribbean voices deserve both recognition and reach. So as we mark the 16th year, we do so with both pride and responsibility. Pride in what has been achieved by this Bocas Literature Festival, and the responsibility for what must be sustained. To the writers whose work we honor tonight, Thank you for your imagination, your discipline, your cultural resilience, and your courage in holding to the power of the narrative. To the organizers of this festival, thank you for building and maintaining this essential cultural space. Your incredible work ethic is the engine that keeps this all going. And to all who support Caribbean literature, in whatever form that support takes, thank you for recognizing that these stories are not optional, they're necessary. On behalf of One Caribbean Media, we remain committed to this journey and our sponsorship. And we look forward to many more years of Caribbean stories being told, heard, and valued, and thereby strengthening this platform for Caribbean writers, particularly the youth, in reading and in writing. It is my fervent hope that Bocas Lit Fest, or Fest actually, continues to be that space where Caribbean stories are not only told, but heard, remembered, and valued. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Every year since 2011, the OCM Bocas Prize has honored 3 books in the genre categories of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, one of which is finally named the overall winner. The overall winner receives a cash award of $10,000 US, and the other genre winners receive $3,000 US. Let's meet the 3 winning writers for 2026 and hear excerpts from their books. We begin with the poetry category. The 5 books shortlisted this year were Heirloom by Catherine Esther Cowie, Dante's Inferno by Lorna Goodison, The World After Rain, Anne's Poem by Canisia Lubrin, Ground Provisions by Shona M. Morgan, The Boy Kingdom by Aishi Obejas. From which the judges chose as poetry winner, The World After Rain by Canisia Lubrin. We can give her a round of applause. And to introduce the writer, here is the chair of the poetry judges, Raymond Antrobus.
Hello, greetings, Wagwan. My first privilege is just being up here. Thank you, Nicholas, for inviting me. But to be up here and actually see the faces that make up this space. So just before I read this, a friend of mine says that poets are a bit like fairies. If you don't clap for them, they die. So I want us to please indulge me in this exercise. You don't have to listen to me. I'm just a man with a microphone. So if you feel comfortable and you're able to, could you stand up, please? Could you stand up? If you're comfortable and if you're able to. Put a slight bend in your knee, and I'd just like you to just reach your arms over your head and just stretch up. And breathe out. And then drop your hands. And I would like you to acknowledge the person to your left. Say hello, how do you do, wagwan, greetings. And to your right, hello. And you may sit. The World After Rain by St. Lucian poet Kenisa Lubrin reads like a long, lucid dream in a strange blue room. The collection is a sustained meditation on anticipated grief, addressed to the poet's mother, Anne. Packed with slippery, evocative, and startlingly fresh poetic phrases that feel somehow at once futuristic and nostalgic. Lubin writes in the metered traditions of Joseph Brodsky and Derek Walcott, while also drawing on the looser, more contemporary conceptual lyric work of Dion Brand and Fred Moten, forging a hybrid Caribbean poetic that holds the past within it and projects it boldly into the future, a new future. Selecting Lubrin's book prompted rigorous and spirited discussion among my fellow judges, Jamaican poet Tanya Shirley and Trinidadian poet Lauren K. Elaine. What are we trying to prize? Do we want to orientate toward the past or the future? How do we look beyond familiar frameworks of identity and representation in poetry? How do we, as a panel and as poets ourselves, navigate our own diasporic dispositions? Who are the poets we turn to move our reading and our craft forward? There were strong opinions among us, and we did not always align. But we are very proud of our shortlist in its entirety, and we encourage you to read all of its books for the fullest sense of where Caribbean poetry stands today. Again, in no particular order, Heirloom by St. Lucian, Tobagoan poet Catherine Esther Cowie, Dante's Inferno by former poet laureate of Jamaica, Lorna Goodison, The Boy Kingdom by Cuban-American poet Achille Obiges, and Ground Provisions by Jamaican poet Shona M. Morgan. In Lubrin's work, we found a genuine challenge, a poet who does not stand in for any easily rendered social position. Yet, with deeper, repeated readings, you begin to locate the language of decoloniality, of body, tongue, heart, and memory. There is a cerebral intimacy here that rewards patience, one that can quietly change the way you listen. Here is the post in post-colonial. Here is language refractured through resilience and resistance emerging new in the aftermath. Here is the world, luminous, unconquered, and possible after history's long reign. It gives me great honor to welcome and congratulate the winner of the 2026 Bocas Prize, Kenisa Lubrin.
Good evening. My thanks, Raymond, for that gift of a citation. It's an extraordinary thing to be listened to, and for that listening to demand even deeper listening. And I would like to thank you and the judges, Tanya and Lauren, for listening to The World After Rain. Alive again, under the red umbrella of the world. Days, I say to endings. Exhaust all the living things, sideways to nothing. Such worlds to report to a dying friend, father or brother or water mother. What to know now, heaped life. Coming again to this timetable of disproving globes, down and up, under the blue umbrella of the world. Singers, still singing after the rain. For dears, you look like life. Fibers on revived surfaces, and all this chirping in between our easy hearts. We resemble first chances, the smoke-strong ghost, polishing love with sharp embraces. With cleft hands, softening the burning tissue of the mouth, gorging on exits that since our beginning would not speak of ends. Here in my embrace, until your backbones crack, the mind can teach the hand to rattle. Open new jaws for counting days, when what is left in this distance between two startling eyes is the traffic of our watching slowing us, bluing new rooms for atmospheric friends responsible to the haze. Who but no one could be here to know this hand, like Mercury, is mine in this closing of wooden lids and lightning bolts above 5 indexes of eyes preserved in acid rains, of a ghost whistling for the tea kettle, foregrounding us in this time of roads closed for walking, the neon afternoons, the silver light, for rheumatic walking to tanks of wastewater, to a cave of miracles where doctors say to me, this accessible parking permit is temporary. 2 years must be enough. Estimate a complete math for your someone's peculiar drowning. Today, mother ever, rally 5 brimming years from the blue-black SOS held above the weeds. Gather me, and the child you were can reappear, while we are distance seeking distance, not as you say, while we are opened, keeping nothing for ourselves. Not the sky at this strange depth, not 100,000 others, not the seawall, part water, part blade, between 2 continents, this high above our girlhood. Not yet to our correct refuge to rum, refusing to soak your bread, not in this nest, your braided grass, my joke, but my groan of water tinting the reservoir. But this fitness trembling at the root of all life, but your fever for today's light into itself. It is a sometime-ish time for the animals, crossed by invisible detachment from even legs, so high up, as are the white ships blinking ahead of rosettes for the hungry, 6 shrubs of seagrass, books, we tell ourselves, a rock, a re-watering hole, flat officers of high ranks and mother pleading with a cloth bundled on her waist. Who might know where the world deepens its temper of salted organs, family shared for balance, and your hands in the midst of washing. My mother says, look how we are astonished. By the jails, I say, by the floors holding our reflection, knowing enough medicine, enough to call the burning world back to love. Is it time again for rivers wounding down the vital pulse of undoing death? You arrive on a piece of paper, and ancient as rice. My gnash of water meets your wood smoke, your oven time. Given more honest eyes, I would find more daylight to wrest an ending from nights that do not end with nothing, with exits or blood thinning into air, downloading strokes into the street, between mothers' breasts, mothers bending, ending, entering this bare room of astonishment is my form of worship, with vowels like E that divides break, ending love, bookend in exile, beginning end, and everything. She says morning to everyone. Give me your circles, promises for return, spells against conductors, against radiation. This wind, you know, conducts a phrase against my childish limits. Again to survive, monosyllabic as life. My mother says, come by heart. And I watch someone hoard these few wisdoms with which, like death, I am the last to leave the room.
Congratulations, Kinesia Lubrin. Now for the fiction category. The 5 shortlisted books were Tall is Her Body by Robert de la Chevotière, the Jamaica collection of Shanty Dream Archive, being Dreamity, Algorithms, Chants, and Riffs by Marcia Douglas, Ibis by Justin Haynes, Paradise Once by Olive Sr., A Different Hurricane by H. Nigel Thomas. The winner in the fiction category is the novel Ibis by Justin Haynes. We can put our hands together for him. And here to introduce him is the chair of the fiction judges, Kelly Baker Josephs.
Thank you. Wow, it's bright up here. Right. As a longtime Bocas attendee and participant, I was truly honored to be asked to chair the panel of judges for the 2026 OCM Bocas Prize for Fiction. It was my pleasure to serve alongside Angela Gogia, writer, bookseller, and community builder based in Toronto, Canada, and Kevin Jared Hussein, the Trinidadian writer who himself won the Bocas Prize for Fiction in 2024 for his novel, Hungry Ghosts. This year's entries for the Fiction Prize were not only large in number, but large in scope and ambition. The strength of the entries in this category is a testament not only to the vitality of prose fiction writing from the Caribbean and its diasporas, but also to the growth of the Bocas Lit Fest in the last 16 years. We had over 40 entries for fiction, and those were from publishers, large, medium, and small, ranging from first-time authors to some quite young, from first-time authors, some of them quite young, and from that to canonical names in Caribbean literature. Even with a short list that was expanded to 5, we had some difficulty whittling it down, so we cheated a bit and included 2 honorable mentions, which were A House for Miss Pauline by Diana Macaulay and A Girl Within a Girl Within a Girl by Nana Reddy. Our panel of judges found these novels to be page-turners with unforgettable characters whose stories of creative survival lingered with us well after we finished reading. For our official shortlist, you've heard the list, but let me tell you a little bit more about them. Tall is Her Body by Robert de la Chevotière, who hails from Dominica, Guadeloupe, and Bermuda. He's traveled a lot. This novel's title comes from the English translation of Dominica. So Tall is Her Body. And the story spans the protagonist's lifetime, his migrations to and away from the people he loves, intertwined with the fate of the banana industry in his homeland. We also selected the Jamaica collection of the Shanty Dream Archive by Jamaican writer Marcia Douglas, whose novel The Marvelous Equations of the Dread was shortlisted in this category in 2017. The Jamaica collection invites us in an imaginative journey through the entwined histories of migration and loss, dreams and destinies. Jamaican Olive Sr., winner of the overall Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature in 2017, was again a contender this year for her novel Paradise Once, which is a remarkable feat of historical fiction in which she tenderly recreates the rarely depicted world of the Taino people. Rounding out the fiction prize shortlist is A Different Hurricane by Vincentian H. Nigel Thomas. In this tightly woven novel of narrative of secrets on the verge of exposure, Thomas lays bare the difficult choices we make for the people and the places that we love. He compels readers to think deeply about what it means to stay in the Caribbean when you have good reasons and viable options to leave. This brings me to the judge's choice for winner of the 2026 OCM Bocas Prize for Fiction, Ibis by Justin Haynes. Justin hails from just outside Port of Spain, and it is his first novel. With Ibis, he gifts us a complexly layered narrative that moves dizzyingly across eras, but is anchored in a small village in Trinidad and by a young Venezuelan migrant's desperate search to find her mother. The story is told by a chorus of voices, each revealing the self-interested choices, heartbreaking losses, and altruistic sacrifices that interconnect lives in a small place with a long history. Blending touches of magical realism with Napoleon humor, Justin conveys a keen sense of how historical and political forces shape the intimate bonds that define our lives. Please join me in congratulating Justin and welcoming him to the stage.
Pleasant good evening. Thank you to a few people. Thank you to Christina and Adalbert, who just said hello. Thank you, Raymond, for making us stretch. Thank you, Kelly, for not making us stretch. I'm just going to read a little bit from the beginning. It's called, the chapter is called The Scarlet Ibis and the News of the Day. When everyone saw the scarlet ibis perched atop the once notorious house of ill repute, near the edge of the village, there was a collective shiver, although no one would admit it. At first, no one thought anything of the roosting bird. The village was a mile from a tributary that spat river water out into the sea where a mangrove blossomed, and where 50 or 60 ibises nested and fed. This ibis had just lost its way, we figured. But the ibis stood on top of the house where Catherine, the great disemboweler, had once ruined the village's reputation through wooing, bullying, then tearing men asunder. And so this ibis unsettled us. It suggested a gravestone marking a glum future. It tightened anuses. And so ibis rumors nestled. Bacchanal, said Hospitalis. Commerce, said Mickey. Maljo, said the glasses and goateed UWI graduate. A fourth member of our crew of wet sponges said that the bird had been sent to distract from the news of the day. 3 village fishermen still missing, held in Venezuela for ransom for a week now. 2 newspaper reporters arrived on the 3rd day of the fishermen's disappearance, having caught the story scent and showing up to poke villagers in their nose holes with their elongated microphones. We said little. But the next day, the rest of the island learned all about it. Extra, extra, the Daily Gazette shouted. Another international Venezuelan incident. G's and ages, said Hospitalis. Out in the capital, the Minister of National Security shook her finger in the media. Be careful where you fishermen cast your lines. But we villagers condoned and continued to cast a gimlet eye on the ibis. Bad omen, we finally said. More like a harbinger, said the glasses and goateed UWI graduate, fingering his square-cut beard. We cut-eyed him. Wind ruffled ibis feathers. The day before the ibis arrived, there was more bad news delivered forthwith when the grandmother in Bombois, the next village over, met her end, when the bus that she was traveling in smashed into a water truck moving in the opposite direction. The truck having hopped the highway median and plowed right into the granny-holding bus. Then there was the rumored burgeoning Sukuya problem as well, and Mark II, the 13 going on 14-year-old village scamp, said, "That is only Saga boy sucking up everybody neck at night, man." But the ibis was the worst signal. Opinions metronomed left then right. The ibis might have been a jumbie bird deployed to bring big bad village luck onto us. We hadn't experienced such sideways luck since the scandal with Catherine the Great Disemboweler, courting bad love a year before with Magnus and Romulus Titus, Miss Titus's 2 returnee sons, and everyone was anxious to avoid a similar incident. The Gazette wouldn't print that kind of news, but the island grapevine was faster anyway, more deliberate, and clearer about this kind of Mako business. All of us burrowing our noses into each other's concerns for cheap entertainment. We knew the reason for all of this, the residual effect of Catherine the Great Disemboweler, or worse, Catherine the Great Disemboweler's spectral mother, Haney. The morning after the ibis appeared, the gazettes and radio said that the missing fishermen were up a Venezuelan river when they were snatched. We already knew this. The fishing beds in the seas close to our village coastline were almost all fished out. Fishermen were encroaching on Venezuelan waters, needs must, when the devil drives. The Ministry of National Security soon corroborated this up-the-river news and chastised fishermen in gazetted print. But the ransom that had only been meant for village cell phones and families of the fishermen soon leaked out onto larger social media sites, and soon the entire village knew of the ransom demands, 200,000 USD for each of the captured fishermen. "Them boys dead for sure," said Hospitalis softly. Just to make sure that we knew they meant business, the captors delivered unto us an oil smeared and grease under the fingernail, chopped off little finger from one of the kidnapped fishermen wrapped in weakened Venezuelan bolivars. 200,000 each was scribbled on the bill. "But that looking like Sukdeo finger," shouted Big Mouth Mickey. Sukdeo's wife Indira in her backyard 5 houses away heard this declaration and lost consciousness right there among her rows of pigeon peas plants. Mickey was wrong. It was actually Ramdeen's finger. "But you's a real ass, man," Bunny hissed at Mickey later, Bunny being the only fisherwoman in the village. A woman with real clout, arms as big as promises, and who had been visiting Indira when she collapsed and had been the one who carried her back into her house from her crash-landed spot among the pigeon peas. Firemen slung over Bunny's shoulder. We looked to the roof to see if this satisfied the ibis. It did not. The reason that we were not completely cat-spraddled by the ibises was because of our antidote, our countermeasure, our amulet, our little Milagros from Venezuela, who, one could argue, was a harbinger of the ibises, and who we used to justify our actions, us using her as a talisman against evil, a shield against vice, and a cure for the village's low-end venial sins, which had resulted in the specter of Catherine the Great Disemboweler's mother. Thank you.
Congratulations, Justin Haynes. The final category is nonfiction, the most diverse of the 3 genres. The 5 shortlisted books were The Possibility of Tenderness, a Jamaican memoir of plants and dreams by Jason Allen Payson, A Sense of Arrival by Kevin Adonis Brown, Silence and Resistance, Memoir of a Girlhood in Haiti by Monique Kleska, The Snag, A Mother, a Forest, and Wild Grief by Tessa McWatt, Fearless, Sleepless, Deathless, What Fungi Taught Me About Nourishment, Poison, Ecology, Hidden Histories, Zombies, and Black Survival by Maria Pinto. And our third winner this evening in the nonfiction category is The Snag by Tessa McWatt. And here to introduce her is the chair of the nonfiction judges, Alison Donnell.
Good evening, everyone. I'm not going to ask you to stretch, but I would just observe that a room full of literature lovers is a happy place, and we may want to smile. It has really been my total pleasure to chair the judging for the nonfiction category of the prize this year. And I want to begin by thanking my fellow judges, Onikila Bennett and Richard Charan. As you can imagine, our task to find a winner was as challenging as it was rewarding. And I just want to comment on the competitiveness of this category and the quality as well as the variety of writings we read, and how I really think it speaks to the way in which nonfiction now resides and as a really vital part of a Caribbean literary ecosystem, and as a genre that's redefining and reinvigorating what the literary means and how it works. Our shortlist for this year's nonfiction prize comprised the 5 books we've already heard, in which we all took pleasure and education. And I think in their own way, all offered that awakening of new Caribbean narratives. Kevin Adonis Brown's A Sense of Arrival offered a kind of bewildering and beautiful multimodal approach to Caribbean blackness, powerfully lyrical elaboration of that possibility of arrival, a conceptual and an artistic arrival as a mode of being and becoming. Jason Allen Paysant's The Possibility of Tenderness, a Jamaican memoir of plants and dreams, issues an ethical call to find tenderness in the natural world. An absorbing work, part memoir, part tribute to his grandmother, and part a commitment to reconnect to Coffee Grove, Jamaica, as a location of ancestral and present meaning. Monica Kleska's Silence and Resistance, a memoir of girlhood in Haiti, is a striking combination of Black girlhood studies, Caribbean studies, and feminist writing, deftly weaving her personal journey from girlhood to adulthood, alongside the intimate emotional turmoil of domestic violence and the national trauma of Haiti's brutal political history. Maria Pinto's Fearless, Sleepless, Deathless, What Fungi Taught Me About Nourishment, Poison, Ecology, Hidden Histories, Zombies, and Black Survival is, as its title indicates, a highly original extension of what it means to write about nature. It enveloped us in hidden, complex, and beautifully strange world of fungi, charting a new course for Black naturalism and exposing understudied connections spanning the Caribbean, the African diaspora, and the globe. As this shortlist for nonfiction highlights, the works under consideration this year consistently drew attention to 2 themes: familial reconnection and what it means to write of nature in the Caribbean. Our unanimous winner, Tessa McQuart's The Snag, A Mother, a Forest, and Wild Grief, combines these 2 concerns in a work of rare brilliance. It bears witness to the world in crisis, both climate emergency and pandemic, filtering this through the anticipatory grief for her mother, a companion piece in many ways to After Rain. The Snag articulates in bold, clear, and searingly beautiful language how our personal grief is intimately connected to planetary loss. Elegantly crafted outward from the personal and compelling at every turn, it speaks at once to the specificity of losing a parent, to the collective trauma of ancestral grief, and to our communal sorrow in the face of monumental planetary disturbances. It inspires us to be alert to a world in need of our care, and yet in its own acknowledgement of its human limits, it encourages us not to be paralyzed by how compromised, how imperfect our lives are. Rather, it invites us to care for each other as trees care for the forest, and thereby imparts rich lessons of hope rooted in the natural world. The Snag models what it feels and what it means to think and feel, a poetics of relation in the now. It imparts to us the rich rewards of listening and observing, and narrates the possibility of solidarity as human practice. Huge congratulations to Tessa McQuart for winning with the snag, and welcome to the stage.
Good evening, or if you're on the same time zone as my body, good morning. Thank you so much for everything that the festival has offered so far. I feel very welcomed and very grateful. I'm going to read from the very beginning of the book in a section called Wild Grief. Today is the last day of the hottest year in recorded history. I stare at the insect black letters of that sentence in my fresh notebook and wonder how many others are writing the same. To their friends, their lovers, on a screen, in diaries, in sand, on walls. The earth is vast, but black letters march purposefully like laden ants to connect us. Why bother? Why try to capture 2 years of events, bulletins, reports, and singed images, the COPs 27 and 28, when scribbles on paper are fanciful and flammable? Why even try at the end of this first of the hottest years to come? Because although loss is immeasurable, words march in patterns towards meaning. It comes in waves, this sorrow that has me here at my desk writing one. Out the window to my left, darkness has fallen, and a few muted fireworks rise limply too early from some eager neighbors rushing out the year. The slate sky over London rooftops reddens in my imagination as I think about that August 2 years ago as I was moving my mother out of her house. Something was burning, but the burning was thousands of miles away on the Greek island of Evia. A woman my mother's age was standing outside of her home, her face contorted in a cry for help, her hand on her heart, while behind her flames raged from a wildfire approaching the village. On the island named for Earth, the fires destroyed livelihoods, homes, spirits. I told my mother, "Don't worry, this is just a house you are moving from. Don't worry, you will be safe." I doubted my own words. I became preoccupied with how to stay rooted. In that moment, I became obsessed with trees. I can't remember it all in order, but in that year, someone made jokes about Tour de France organizers having to pour cold water on the road to stop it melting under the riders. I made wide eyes at the wildfires in California and Siberia. I swiped up on Instagram. Even swiping up, I saw the number of flying insects worldwide had plunged by 60% since 2004. Even swiping up, I could not ignore the news that birds were falling from the sky in India. That year, I befriended a dog, took it for walks on the South Downs, and later sat by the River Ouse and read about the Columbia spotted frog, the Adelie penguins, koalas, ringed seals, polar bears, monarch butterflies, Atlantic cod, leatherback sea turtles, American picas, all in danger of extinction. I read warmer temperatures meant that sea turtles were all being born female. Later in the year, while I commuted to a university to teach others to do what I do, to sit at a desk and try to ignore the sky, igniting sky behind the window, I read that Iceland had a funeral to mourn its first glacier lost to climate change. I swiped up after learning that there was only 17 years of groundwater left in Punjab. Like my mother, people in Kenya, Bangladesh, and many territories around the world were being forced to move from their homes. But unlike my mother, they were no longer safe. I rallied around the idea that my mother had experienced many separations in her life, from her birthplace, from her husband. So rupture was a condition of her inheritance as it is mine. I tried to believe in writing as belonging and salvation, but tonight, writing is only insect black letters. In the year following my mother's move, I had research leave from my job, and as I took guilty flights back and forth across the Atlantic to visit her, my phone remained flooded with news. The ice sheet went out of long-term equilibrium. Rainwater was no longer safe to drink anywhere on Earth, and a third of Pakistan, a country of 220 million people, was underwater. 2/3 of Antarctica's native species were under threat of extinction from rising temperatures. Scientists predicted the collapse of the Gulf Stream. In an order that eludes me, the event horizons of that year include the Yangtze, the Rhone, and the Colorado rivers all beginning to dry up. Hail fell for only 10 minutes in Catalonia, but it killed a toddler. 400,000 people in northern Kenya faced starvation. 98% of ground insects in the Puerto Rican rainforest had vanished. There weren't enough body bags for the dead in Antakya after 7.8 magnitude earthquake. Meerkats, impalas, Svalbard reindeer, lemurs, and yellow-bellied marmots were all disappearing. Early in the summer, forest fires in Canada burned 4,000% more land than the yearly average. The smoke from the fires turned New York City orange. It was only June, and in the northern states of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, the temperatures reached 45 degrees Celsius. Residents had chest pains, drank contaminated water. Temperatures in Mexico approached 50 degrees Celsius. Athletes at the national games were hospitalized. Wild birds died en masse. Polar bears were not mating. The Cerberus heat dome enveloped Europe. British Columbia burned. Wildfires raged everywhere there were forests. The Spanish army was deployed to fight them. The Acropolis was closed. In China, it was 52 degrees. And the British government gave the go-ahead for further gas and oil drilling in the North Atlantic. And somewhere between continents, a daughter was crying as her mother was threatened with another move. The summer disappeared. Autumn brought bombs and rubble, children made limbless, crippled hospitals, tent villages, rotting corpses, protest, disregarded pleas. My heart was broken, shattered in thin red shards all over this desk. Grief inhabits you and makes itself a home inside you, occupies you like a settler. How is this happening? I feel like I'm going mad, one of my friends said yesterday. You can do nothing about how grief colonizes your body, rearing up unexpectedly. Grief arrives out of rupture. It is evidence of something treasured, now lost. If I sit with this evidence, something will surely come, the way a seed might eventually grow a tree. We are small and hungry and alive. Outside, a flash of light. The explosions are more frequent, even though we are still several hours from the end of the year. A rocket whistles, and there, through the window, I spot a stunted bouquet of gunpowder. I turn back to my page and hover over the black letters. The year will turn. Let the others toast it. How do we grieve? It's not just a home. Stay with me while I start from the beginning. Thank you.
Congratulations to Tessa McWatt. And many thanks to all the judges of the 2026 OCM Bocas Prize for the time and thought they put into the task of adjudication. At the final stage of judging, the chairs of the 3 genre panels come together to choose an overall winner of the prize, joined by the chief judge. Chairing the final deliberations this year was Margaret Busby, the justly celebrated publisher, editor, and longtime champion of Caribbean writers, for which she was recognized with the 2015 Bocas Henry Swanzy Award. We are honored that she has returned to the festival this year in the role of Chief Judge. Please welcome Margaret Busby for the announcement we're all eager to hear.
I'm short, aren't I? Good evening, everyone. What a pleasure to be back at the Bocas Lit Fest. Thank you, Marina, for introducing me to Bocas 16 years ago. It's a phenomenal celebration of words, stories, and ideas. And what a privilege to be about to announce the winner of the OCM Bocas Prize. I was a judge for the inaugural prize in 2011, and it's so exciting to see how far its reputation has soared since then. Over the years, the shortlists have featured more than 100 writers, both established and emerging. I'm sure for each of them, the recognition has been affirmative and sometimes transformative. A priceless gift for any writer is to be read. As someone who's judged many prizes in my literary career, I always emphasize the importance of long lists, as well as short lists, as well, of course, as whichever final winner is chosen. After all, no one who likes books and literature is ever saying, just read one book a year. And every single book exists because someone thinks it deserves to be championed. And speaking of the publisher, the editor, somebody thinks this is a book that should be published. I can't emphasize enough the important role of publishers in shaping the literary canons. So I'm ever hopeful that lists of publishing houses or publishing maisonettes based in the Caribbean will keep expanding, as must happen elsewhere in the global south, with publishing becoming a viable career for many of us, for many more of us, wherever we are, whoever we are, allowing us greater ownership of our stories, better able to connect the local with global audiences. It's not us and them. We're all in this together. Writers, readers, booksellers, agents, publishers, reviewers, broadcasters, and the Bocas Lit Fest exemplifies this. The literature of the world is lavishly seeded by the Caribbean. Its impact is undeniable, including writers without whom everyone's reading would be the poorer. An incontestable value of the OCM Bocas Prize and its unique mission is to highlight the cultural reach of the region, the weighty influence of those who draw inspiration from it. As the most prestigious and lucrative literary award in the region, the OCM Bocas Prize has a special role to play in recognizing, celebrating, and supporting regional writers. And this year's long list and short list features writers who all deserve to be read. Bocas remains essential in centering focus on the region, drawing us here again and again. And what exemplary talent in the long list, the short list, the category winners. You've heard what the category judges each said, and so I'm not going to reiterate it, but we had wonderful, stimulating, warm discussions, and if I was still a publisher, I'd have published all of them. So my advice is that everyone reads all the books, where the love of literature brought us here, and we're all in this together. Well, it's now my pleasure to announce the book we chose from the category winners. We didn't come to blows. We had a lovely discussion, and we're honoring talent with deep roots in the Caribbean region, at the same time as being a reminder of how we necessarily branch out to connect our concerns with the state of the rest of the world, showing how diasporan lives resonate with emotions that bring us together, whether through pain or love. So, the book we have chosen as overall winner of the OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature is The Snag. A Mother, a Forest, and Wild Grief by Tessa McWatt. Come and speak. Oh, you want to? Oh, I see.
I was just telling Kinesia that I wrote something down, but I didn't print it because I didn't think I was winning. But I would like to read it if that's okay with you. Okay. I have to just give me a second. Thank you. Whew. Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to the prize jurors and in the nonfiction category and to the other overall judges. My sincere thanks to the Bocas Festival, so many of you who make this remarkable event possible here and abroad. I am so grateful to be here. The last time Marielle and I were booking flights from London to Port of Spain for the festival was March in 2020. And of course, I never got here, and no one was flying anywhere after that for a while. So I feel such a thrill to finally be here. Over the years as a tutor, I have been privileged to work with and mentor some of the young writers who emerged through this generous gathering of support, and I'm grateful to have been welcomed onto this incredibly fertile ground. For someone who left the Caribbean at a young age, it's this event and others like it that keep me connected to my essence and that of my family whose hearts are rooted in the Caribbean imagination and culture. And thanks to the key people who made this book possible, my friends and family who appear in it, my agent Jackie Kaiser, who I'm thrilled is here with me, and my editors and the publishers in Canada and the UK. This honor is really for my mother, the central figure of this book, the proud Guyanese woman who bore me, all the while steeped in the grief of the loss of her first son. But she is my heart's guide, and a copy of the book rests on the table beside her bed in the care home where she now lives. She still surprises me with every visit, and I spoke to her on the phone before I traveled here, knowing she would light up at the idea of me being in Trinidad. She said, "Oh, I'm coming. Bring me." She visited Trinidad and Tobago annually for Carnival, jumping up in a band, wearing very little, even into her 70s. I told her about tonight and reminded her about the book. She's looked at the pictures and recognized herself playing the piano, but she hasn't had the cognitive focus to read in years, despite previously being an avid reader and insightful storyteller herself. I told her that the book was nominated for a very important prize, but that I wasn't going to win because the writers I was up against were among the very best in the world. I told her that I'd already won, though, just being on the list with the magnificent Kinesia Lubrin and Justin Haynes. Thank you so much, you brilliant and very best, for everything you've given me as a reader of your works. Justin, what a wild journey through the multitudes of past and present in your miraculous prose. Kinesia, I feel we traveled some of the same tube lines towards mothers, crossing one another at major junctures on our separately distinct and yet companionable journeys. Your poetry astonishes. I am astonished by your work. The core of The Snag is an exploration of griefs, those that we face as individuals, but more substantially as communities experiencing the consequences of the extractive cult of capital, the dividing consumptive practices that fuel genocides, pit us against one another in the streets and across borders, and perpetuate the destruction of land, air, and water. The book opens with a long litany of losses that the climate crisis is responsible for, which I just read, but I can add to that the recent destruction of lives in the Caribbean by the fossil fuel-powered Hurricane Melissa and others. The fact that with the rising sea levels, that between 29 and 32 million people in Latin America and the Caribbean could lose their homes. Between 70 to 90% of coral reefs could die by mid-century, and so on. Jenny Leite, a Sami artist in the Arctic, says that this collective grieving is how we witness the end of the world. The end of the world is the end of individual worlds. When grief takes over, it feels like the end. But as we know, grief is evidence of love. We love this place. We love our home. And we are love's embodiment. Our bodies dance in its expression, and we pray in its many voices. So the book is also about dancing and prayer. Dancing as fire, dancing as water, dancing as resistance, as communion with self and others, with plants and sea and mountains and clouds. Dancing like a forest in motion. Prayer as attention, as an honoring, the way we were doing here this weekend, gathering as seekers of what is real. Literature is real and true when all around us is uncertain and false. Here we are giving our attention to our deepest humanity through its expression in art. We are praying. We are also, all together now, using our greatest resources as imaginative beings, engaging in reimagining the world with every word we share between us. Writing and reading are exercises in connection, empathy, and compassion. And with each word shared between us, we are changed. We can change. We must change. Our imaginations show us that another world is possible. The snag is a lament for the planet, a cry for radical change, for ruptures that will bring a reimagining of how we live as nature, because we are nature. We are the nurse logs in a forest, the snags who give life to new generations of seedlings and saplings. We are each other's undergrowth and canopy. The potential of our human forest is infinite. Thank you so much for this honor. And as my mother would say, as she grasps the handles of her walker after the strain of rising and reaching, goody goody.
Congratulations again, Tessa Makwat. We now invite Douglas Wilson of OCM and Marina Salandi. We can pass here, yes. Marina Salandi Brown of the Bocas Lit Fest to present you with your award. Thank you very much. Can we just show some more appreciation for all of our winners this evening? And of course, our overall winner. Thank you so much. And before we close our program this evening, we want to welcome Leslie Clark, who is a member of the board of directors of the Bocas Lit Fest. He will give us the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ardene. Good evening, everyone. Watagwan. Raymond. It is my honor, on behalf of our president and founder, Marina Salandi Brown, and my fellow board directors, to give vote of thanks this evening. Everywhere, the arts and culture sectors are feeling the effect of global political and economic uncertainty. That in the 16th year of the OCM Bocas Prize, Caribbean writers can continue to showcase their work and be rewarded for their excellence is a wondrous and precious thing. I want you all to give a big round of applause to all the writers who against the odds keep producing new and landmark work, especially our winners this time, Tessa McWatt, Kenesia Lubrin, and Justin Haynes. And together with them, we must cheer on One Caribbean Media, which has been steadfast in its commitment as prize title sponsor to not only hosting this evening and providing prizes annually, but to spreading the word all year round about the importance of our stories. We thank you, Douglas, and your CEO, Dawn Thomas, for your dedication to the cause. We are all indebted to you. Where is she? Our long-standing partners and friends at NALIS, thank you again. Welcoming us here to the old fire station and to the National Library of Trinidad and Tobago, our festival home. For writers, being validated by one's peers is something to be treasured. This year, we give thanks to a very hard-working panel of OCM Bocas Prize judges, led by legendary Margaret Busby. They read over 80 books and had many long deliberations. Thank you, judges, for your care and passion for Caribbean writing. Thank you to our always gracious MC, Ardene Sirjoo, and to our tribute readers, Andre Bagu and Ira Matur. Special thanks from everybody, everywhere, must go to the entire Bocas Lit Fest team, led by Festival Director Nicholas Laughlin, who's on his phone, and Managing Director Georgia Popwell. It's okay, Nick, you did a great job. Please give them a generous round of applause. It is their incalculable hours of selfless work that underpins the success of this evening of ceremony and the year-round work in developing Caribbean literature. Applause, please, for Shivani Ramlochan, Marielle Forbes, Melvina Hazard, Maria Tapin, Joy Lokpat, Neela Bhagwan Singh, Dwayne Dubari, Sarai Andrews, Patrice Matthews, Joanne Descent, and festival staff and volunteers. Thanks to Tia Douglas and the National Poetry Slam team, to Cedric Smart and the team for the sound, Impact Media for the live stream, festival photographers Sean Rambaran and Satish Rampasad, graphic designer Richard Rollins, and webmaster James Barber. This evening's prize ceremony is a high point of this literary long weekend of the bigger Bocas Lit Fest. And the festival's rich program of events for all ages would not be possible without our sponsors and partners. To the Minister of Culture and Community Development and her staff, Thank you for supporting our work in the literary arts. Thanks in particular to the J.B. Fernandez Memorial Trust 1 for the financial support of the festival and our youth programs. The British Council, the Massey Foundation, and the University of the West Indies St. Augustine's Faculty for Humanities and Education have been partners from the very beginning, and joining them this year are the Ansa McCall Foundation, plus Associated Brands Industries Limited, Great Foods, Agostini Limited, and Mr. Andrew Barnes as Poetry Slam Prize donors. A huge thanks to you all. Essential to the 2026 festival experience are our new visual technology partner, AVIT Support Limited, our live stream partner, Amplia, and our print partner, Office Authority. We thank you, and we look forward to long and fruitful relationships with you. In these straitened times, the festival's full and diverse program is possible only because of our collaborators, whether funding a participating writer, lending venues, or hosting events across the festival schedule. We are grateful to the National Museum and Art Gallery, the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, the National Academy for the Performing Arts, NAPA, the venue for tomorrow night's National Poetry Slam Finals, the High Commission of Canada, and the embassies of Spain, Colombia, and France. A very special merci to French Ambassador Guillaume Père and his staff for hosting the reception that follows this ceremony. The Adam Mickiewicz Institute and the Polish Ministry of Culture and National Heritage, the Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival, CAISO, Sex and Gender Justice, the Big Black Box, Softbox Gallery, the Canada Research Chairs Program, publishers Jacaranda and Akashic Books, and the Frank Collymore Literary Endowment of Barbados. And there are still more. COSTAT with its student internship program, the Writers Union of Trinidad and Tobago, All-Inclusive TT, Let's Read TNT, the Caribbean Books Foundation, the Quiet Chapter, the National Youth Parliament, the National Carnival Commission, and the Caribbean Sign Language Center. And what is this festival without participating booksellers? Thank you all for our invaluable funders and partners. We are also grateful to our sponsors in kind, Signpost, Pinguino, Cocobel, Twigs Natural, and Unicoma. And at the reception a bit later, you will join us in thanking Hadco, the Naughty Grape, and Barton and Gustier. Special thanks to Barton. Special thanks to Lonsdale Saatchi & Saatchi and the Cape Park Hotel, our longtime partners, and all media personnel in print and broadcast media for connecting us to the nation. This long, long list of partners reminds us of the importance of the Bocas ecosystem and how collaborations of all kinds extend the reach of the festival for the good of all. I can't conclude without expressing gratitude to the writers, speakers, and performers featured in our program, including Shalini Siriram, our 2026 festival artist. We thank you for your words, stories, ideas, and the inspiration you offer to us all. And while I'm talking about people who make the festival possible, I must acknowledge the very generous individuals and families who have made donations over the past year. You are listed in the official festival guide. Thanks to those of you who have been contributing during the festival days via the donation boxes, one of which you will find as you exit here tonight. You've heard many names, but certainly there will be unintended omissions. Forgive us and know of our enduring gratitude. Finally, thanks to you, our audience, in person and online. There is no festival and no community without you.
Thank you, Leslie, and I join you in thanking all those who help make this amazing festival a reality every single year. And on that note, I hope you're not all clapped out yet, because we have to thank our amazing interpreters to my right for their tireless efforts throughout tonight, and they come from the Caribbean Sign Language Center, yes? Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure, as always, being your MC. Congratulations again to all the awardees, and remember, there is still a full day left at the Bocas Lit Fest with a packed day of readings, discussions, workshops, one-on-ones with all of our awardees, and the festival finale, the National Poetry Grand Slam finals, tomorrow night at Napa. Finally, to further celebrate and toast our prize winners, we invite you to join us now at the residence of the French ambassador on Mary Street in St. Clair. Do enjoy the rest of the evening and the rest of the festival.